मुझे लगता है एक स्टार किड के पास एक वो चीज़ होती है कि अगर अच्छी परफॉर्मेंस नहीं है, उनको सिखाने के लिए ना 2-3 फिल्में और मिल जाती है कि अभी सीख जाएगा, अरे देखो इम्प्रूवमेंट है, अरे थर्ड फिल्म में कितने अच्छे लग रहे हैं, अरे फोर्थ फिल्म में तो पकड़ आ ही गई है. तो इट्स बट when we come, it's like you can't act, we gave you an opportunity, you're out.
According to my research, since 2015, over 30 products of nepotism have been launched in the Hindi film industry. This is specifically pertaining to individuals who come from influential families that are in some way connected to the film industry and have gone on to have theatrical debut releases for the most part, with a lot of marketing and hype surrounding their movie titles. This has further made me conclude, as I also speak about the talent that is going to get launched in the coming months or years, is that this is a phenomena you should get used to, because they aren't flocking in small numbers. They are coming in hordes and you can't do anything about it. The reason I also bring this topic up is because you will notice with the names I mentioned that mediocrity outweighs the talent by a huge percentage. Majority of the talent that I will mention have had opportunity to prove themselves with multiple projects, yes. They have been critically blasted online, trolled mercilessly, yes. And despite their repeated commercial failings, they have been handed over several projects with production companies and stars, leading to the obvious conclusion that the system will safeguard, protect, and advertise them even further. I've categorized the list of products of nepotism that have been launched since 2015 into my favorites, those who show potential. It's bleak, but they'll be relaunched, don't worry. Shuru hote hi khatam ho gaya. Improvements are lauded and this will continue. Still to come, and the most unique one, the businessman and proximity launch. Some of the names I will mention in this video, you will be shocked at what family ties they have and how anyone and everyone, even remotely related to, at least is given one opportunity to get launched as an actor. Let's first start with my favorites. Ishan Khattar. I think this is a guy who is grossly underutilized in Hindi cinema. I remember watching his first film, Beyond the Clouds, and he was so confident in front of camera, putting forth an exceptionally layered performance as Amir Ahmed. While he was of course rough around the edges in a film like Dhadak, there was an energy and potential range that I could just identify. Something that made me believe that this is an actor who will be here in the long run. While commercial failings have taken over his stint in the Hindi film industry, I believe Ishan was mindful of not being handed over quintessential leading hero roles in Hindi cinema, and hence looked westward for opportunities and shined in projects like A Suitable Boy and The Perfect Couple. While the quality of these shows can be debated, Ishan's work in my opinion is praiseworthy. I cringe at a show like The Royals, but it gave more attention to Khattar than most of his films in Hindi cinema, finally making me the most excited on what he has pulled off in his upcoming film Homebound, directed by Neeraj Ghewal. The man truly is making some exceptionally creative choices, and I think that will make him sustain in the long run. Aditya Rawal. This is an actor who gets little to no attention when it comes to the microscopic lens with which we judge and analyze star kids. Aditya Rawal, the son of Paresh Rawal, was launched during the pandemic with a movie titled Bumfard that directly released on ZEE5 during the time theaters were shut. This was a quintessential star launch but was affected by the circumstances in the world. A generic tale on star-crossed lovers, but where the actor showed great potential, something that the public witnessed was his menacing portrayal in the movie titled Faraz, where he starred opposite Zahan Kapoor. This Hansal Mehta directed film is extremely underrated and showcased brilliant performances by both the leads. Aditya further impressed in a series like Bambai Meri Jaan. I believe if Aditya plays his cards right and gravitates towards characters versus wanting to assimilate to become the leading hero, he will go a long way in the industry. Zahan Kapoor. Speaking of Faraz, Zahan Kapoor is a talent that has burst into the mainstream lens, especially after his riveting performance in the Netflix series Black Warrant, a series that I believe perfectly cast him as the role of the jailer Sunil Gupta. Coming from the illustrious Kapoor family, the individual could have assimilated all the strength to get his dream launch. But I believe he is self-aware that such curated launch pads don't really work out in the current atmosphere of the film industry. The years of theatre at Prithvi have come in handy, as the actor has a command on the craft and language that you can't really say for a lot of kids coming from film families. Babil Khan. This is an actor who got a digital launch like many of the actors who I have spoken about in this category. Actors who in an open market probably would have got a theatrical release, but the timing restricted their appearance to those who are glued to digital platforms. But I must say Babil Khan has consistently impressed me in every title he has featured in, be it the heartbreaking Kala, the technically brilliant The Railwayman, and even a fun and carefree movie like The Friday Night Plan. While his title Log Out that released on Z5 got commercially drowned by Ananya Pandey's Control owing to its similar themes, his performances have been consistently impressive. I hope he strives towards creative greatness and does not get bogged down by the rat race in the film industry, because he has the talent to sustain a great career. The category of shows potential. This is the list of Nepo babies who I believe show great potential, and I must admit this has a lot to do with the privilege they come from, that despite some of their commercial failings, they are still handed over opportunities. But I am merely being realistic about the nature of the industry and telling you you're going to see more of them. So it's best to tell you that I believe they will surprise you as the years go by. This is strictly a personal choice, of course. Nothing is set in stone. Ahan Pandey. Everyone exaggerates the adjectives associated with someone like Ahan Pandey with the success of Sayyara, claiming him to be this generation's Hrithik Roshan, and I'm here to tell you, no one can be Hrithik Roshan. While I think this comparison is not fair to someone like Ahan Pandey, Chunky Pandey's nephew, but my doppelganger definitely had a zeal, passion and magnetic energy in his role as Krish, which India unanimously gravitated towards. Even though I still believe he needs to work on his diction, with his dialogue delivery often getting muffled at times in the film, I believe there will be offerings lining up. Practically, I think the next project will be with YRF, but I think the decisions he makes now are crucial in dictating how the career pans out, because it is after such humongous success where everyone tunes in to see your next move. And I'm extremely curious to see how that pans out. Alaya F. An actor who for me was probably one of the most impressive debuts in the last decade was seeing what Alaya F, Pooja Bedi's daughter, pulled off in Jawani Janiman, a movie that released theatrically just before the pandemic. She had a spunk, a great screen presence and held her own while sharing screen space with Saif Ali Khan and Tabu. However, the actress has made some mediocre to terrible creative choices in the form of Almost Pyar with DJ Mohabbat and Bade Miyan Chote Miyan. While there is some respite with a project like Shrikant, I believe her commercial pursuits weighed her down in understanding what will be appreciated by the audience. Not the flower pot roles in star-led movies, but roles of substance. Junaid Khan. This is an actor who somewhat confuses me on what I feel about him as an actor. I can see the theatre chops that he has, as I can see it in the way he enunciates his lines and the clear diction he possesses. However, what I also see is the same awkward demeanour almost bleed into his roles, even when the characters are far away from such personality traits. Junaid was satisfactory in a film like Maharaj, but I think he was completely out of his depth in a movie like Lavyapa, where he just couldn't convince me of being a Dilli ka Londa. I'm still somewhat confused on what I really feel about him, making me think that the project with Sai Pallavi would probably be where I realize whether Amir Khan's son is a lambi race ka ghoda. Alize Agnihotri. This is a launch that went under everyone's radar, and that is Salman Khan's niece, Alize Agnihotri's launch with a movie titled Farre. This is a movie directed by Somendra Padi, the creator behind Budhya Singh Born to Run and Jamtada, and he formulated a brilliant tale with Farre, a movie about school kids, influence, privilege, and a case of plagiarizing that comes under the scanner of the authorities. Alize actually was extremely competent in this role, with little to no news about her future projects. I wonder how her career pans out in this saturated market. Kayose Irani. Boman Irani's son was first launched in Student of the Year in, let's be honest, more or less a character merely meant for comedic relief. However, I did not expect Kayose to transition his career into film direction, making an exceptionally emotional and romantic tale with his short story Ankahi in the anthology Ajeeb Dastas on Netflix. However, it was 4 years later that Irani directed Sar Zameen, where I felt like I couldn't recognize that this was the same director who brought us such a heartbreaking tale just a few years ago. His feature film that released digitally was amateurish, poorly acted, and lacked basic logic. I hope it was a momentary lapse in creative judgment and he will only evolve as a filmmaker. Rasha Thadani, Raveena Tandon's daughter, got launched with a movie titled Azad that was directed by Abhishek Kapoor, and while I can still somewhat identify what the filmmaker was attempting with his rendition of Black Beauty and the dynamics of the British Raj and a love story that is doomed from the onset, the film turned out to be a box office disaster. The silver lining hilariously being Rasha Thadani's song Ui Amma that went on to become a national hit, specifically being lauded for her performance and expressions, something tough to find in the new batch of Nepo babies, a rhythm and flair with dance and expression. What I quickly realized also was that it was way too early to create sweeping statements for a talent that is just 20 years old right now. Ananya Pandey. In contrast, you can of course have an opinion of an actor who has been working for over 6 years in the industry, and I think Ananya Pandey is a classic case of playing to her strengths. What I've clearly noticed is that she is not indulging in even trying what most actors should be known for: versatility. She is primarily focusing on playing close to her own personality with urban and English speaking roles. The offshoots that include her roles in Dream Girl 2 and Kesari 2, in my opinion, where she sports accents, is where she falters, whereas she shines in movies like Ho Gaya Hum Kahan and Control that are more closer to home. I don't know how restrictive this approach may be in the long run, but it's doing her more good than harm currently. The next category is, it's bleak, but they'll be relaunched, don't worry. These are the actors who, in my opinion, were extremely poor with their initial appearances in movies, and no matter what I say, they will be relaunched, so be ready for their next appearances. I'll reference them with just a few lines. Ibrahim Ali Khan. It is not only that he featured in a terribly underwritten script, but he was so out of his depth that even my connection to his character hailing from Greatest Noida, could not produce any empathy or love from me as a viewer. Aman Devgan. While Rasha had a spunk and zeal about her, Aman lacked any kind of suave and charm one expects from a leading man, honestly stumbling to create any impression with the audience. Suraj Pancholi. The man was launched by Salman Khan 10 years ago, and since then, he has been embroiled in his own legal matters for years, subjecting himself to a creative limbo within the industry. His attempt at a comeback with Kesari Veer this year ended up being a disaster, but Suraj showed me personally nothing to believe that he is going to kill it in the future in the industry. Ahan Shetty. I remember at the height of the pandemic, where cinemas had barely opened, watching Tadap with Ahan in the lead, a poor remake of the Telugu film RX 100, and feeling like the leading man was merely a one-trick pony, having the physical demeanor, yes, but lacking any kind of range as an actor. The man is getting relaunched with Border 2 and another film in 2026. Ayush Sharma. The only silver lining of Ayush's first film, Love Yatri, was him dancing to Chogada, an anthem at every Navratre now. The movie, however, was a blink and a miss that simply vanished upon release. Ayush showed some promise 3 years later with his film Antim, but the gaslighting situation was very clear when he was exposed in a terrible film like Ruslan last year. I'm sure, however, the forces will make sure the man reappears in some film or the other in the future. Pashmina Roshan. Hrithik Roshan's niece was launched with the mediocre young romance Ishq Wishk Reloaded, and honestly showed little promise as a leading heroine. A bland, unoriginal, boomer take on a young romance fell flat in theatres, and one does not know what the future has in store for the actor. Shania Kapoor. I may have an unpopular opinion regarding Shania, who I believe is not as bad as people presume, actually being a part of a terrible product instead, in the form of Aankhon Ki Gustakhia, actually faring better than Vikrant, who was almost hamming his way through the film. However, this is just early days, as most products of nepotism are privileged enough to get offers lined up even before they have proven themselves. Shania has 2 upcoming projects that will really cement what we feel about her as an actor. The trio, Agastya Nanda, Khushi Kapoor and Sohana Khan. One of the biggest launches after Student of the Year 2, many people believe that with the guidance of Zoya Akhtar, the actors will get launched and will become household names in the country. However, the results were quite contrary to that assumption. Archie is getting ridiculed as a mediocre attempt at a musical, and the months of chatter claiming the cast was rehearsing for years almost seemed like a hoax when one saw the final result. All 3 products of nepotism did not get glowing reviews, and Khushi went on to star in 2 duds that utterly failed, and Agastya is scheduled to star in Ikkis with Sriram Raghavan and Sohana in King, opposite her father Shah Rukh Khan. Will this completely change the perception we have of Agastya and Sohana? I highly doubt it. The next category is Shuru Hote Hi Khatam Ho Gaya. These are the launches where you know that the long career of actors is extremely bleak and many of these careers have almost come to a standstill. Karan Deol. Sunny Deol's son was launched with Pal Pal Dil Ke Paas, a movie that Sunny Deol himself directed, but the movie was extremely outdated and Karan as the leading man looked so underprepared that I was almost in shock that he was put in such a vulnerable position as a leading man. A disaster from the onset and a career killer in many ways, to be put in the ringer like that so fast. Rajveer Deol, Paloma Dhillon and Avnish Barjatya. While Karan's brother fared better critically, seeming to be slightly better prepared than his brother, he was part of such a mediocre script in the form of Dono, directed by Suraj Barjatya's son Avnish Barjatya. It just never gained steam for the industry or even the audience to take notice of what the future may hold for the actors. This is even true for Poonam Dhillon's daughter, who was launched opposite Rajveer. The results of their movie being so lackluster that there has been officially no announcement of their work later on. Atiya Shetty. Starring opposite Suraj Pancholi, Atiya from the onset was out of her depth, clearly seeming like someone who was not interested in this profession, especially something that was clear to me in an appearance like Mubaraka. There was a momentary surprise, however, with her film Motichur Chaknachur, but that surprise ended up being her last appearance, as Atiya seems to have left the industry to focus on a family life. Aadar Jain. The Ranbir Kapoor's cousin was launched in 2017 under the YRF banner with the movie titled Kaidi Band that ended up being a huge commercial flop. What's insane is the downward spiral in Jain's career, as he was launched with a lot of hype with Anya Jain, but both the talents were almost dropped immediately, never faring with the long-term plans of the company, almost having to fend for themselves, and Aadar since then has featured in Hello Charlie in 2021, and the less said about that film, the better. Priyank Sharma and Reeva Kishan. This is a project you may have not even heard of. Sab Kushal Mangal, a movie that released in 2020 and where the makers really used Akshay Khanna to promote the film, also featured two products of nepotism getting launched in the form of Padmini Kolhapuri's son Priyank Sharma and Ravi Kishan's daughter Reeva Kishan. The movie was a box office disaster, and since then, we haven't heard anything about the future prospects of the leading pair. The next category is about actors whose improvements are lauded, and this will continue. I'll tell you very honestly, I'm not as dismissive as most of the internet is when it comes to Janhvi Kapoor, because I have admitted to liking some of her performances. Is this a case of even minor improvements being lauded and that such a privilege would not be handed over to an outsider, as Radhika mentioned in the introduction? Probably. I just want to reference that I did like her performances in movies like Millie, Good Luck Jerry and Mr. and Mrs. Mahi. What however has stayed consistent is that Janhvi's dialogue delivery and nasally raspy tone has always taken the forefront, because of which she has been justifiably criticized. Something that I even noticed in the small glimpse of her in the Sunny Sanskari trailer. This is a privilege handed over to Sara Ali Khan too, gaslighting all of us into believing that she is the next star of Bollywood with a brilliant debut, only to be exposed with such terrible performances later on that one absolutely lost hope. And with giving up hope when you are down and out, even a glimmer of promise is presented as something extraordinary. And that is the reception Sara is getting for her role in Metro, where she was genuinely fun, but it isn't something spectacular, not even close. So both the actors who we have been seeing since the last almost 6 to 7 years now will, I believe, get this privilege consistently. Of an industry providing them a safety net every time, faltering in the process is inevitable, as they will be protected, and when they show some promise, it will be our prerogative. It will be expected from us to acknowledge and sing praises of them. Well, it was the bare minimum, which would be expected from any actor. As my favorite philosopher Roy Keane famously says,
Roy, that's his job.
the next category is focusing on people who are still to prove themselves. Aryan Khan. There is a lot of pressure on this man to deliver with his series on Netflix, and my only hope is that it is a good satirical comedy on the film industry, because we can't let it just be a fluff piece with cameos, because that will be hugely disappointing. Naomika Saran, Rinki Khanna's daughter and Rajesh Khanna's granddaughter, is most probably getting launched with Agastya Nanda in some rom-com project that is rumored to be produced by Maddock Films. Simar Bhatia. In the Sriram Raghavan project with Agastya Nanda titled Ikkis, based on the life of Arjun Khetrapal, the movie will also feature Simar Bhatia, who is Akshay Kumar's niece. Aishwari Thakre. This is an actor that is getting launched this upcoming weekend by Anurag Kashyap in the movie titled Nishanchi. The grandson of Balasaheb Thakre and the son of Smita Thakre, who has been acting actively working in the film industry as a producer since the late 90s. The last category of people that I want to talk about is the most interesting one, which is the businessman and proximity launch. The craziest case of nepotism is not family ties, but when someone has such influence from a monetary business perspective that they can help fund a project centered around their child. We have jokingly referenced the case of the trailer of Heer Express playing in theaters for months, and hilariously, when you do take a deep dive on how or why the film is getting advertised so much, you stumble upon the family ties of Divita Juneja, the lead actress of the film, who is the daughter of Sanjeev Juneja, who is the brainchild behind products like Kesh King, Dr. Ortho, Roop Mantra and Pet Safa, all products that are heavily advertised in theaters. The monetary stronghold, of course, may have led to the aggressive advertising of the movie for his daughter, but sadly this did not push ticket sales at all, leading to the film becoming a financial disaster.